Well, good morning. I want to say welcome to Christ the Redeemer. If today's your first day with us, I want to say welcome to our family. Great to have you. Hope that you and your family are filled with blessings this morning, and hope that the Lord really speaks a word into your heart today that really blesses you. Beautiful weekend for us this weekend as we celebrate All Saints Day yesterday and All Souls Day today, and the day that we remember perhaps traditions in your family, but certainly a day that we remember those who have gone before us. And I think one of the things that often brings me back into the reality of where we are is my favorite church in Rome. I was in Rome just this past year with my mom and my dad. My mom and dad celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary last year. And one of the things on my bucket list was to take them to Rome, just to celebrate the gift of the faith with them, just to celebrate what they had passed on to me, and had long wanted to just say thank you for that, and thought that a pilgrimage to Rome would be able to celebrate that with them. And it was a real glorious trip. And last January, I shared many of the graces with you from that trip. But when I was there in Rome, this past January, with my mom and dad on the pilgrimage, I had about an hour alone. And I was able to steal some time off to one of my favorite churches in Rome, which is Our Lady of the Conception of the Capuchins. It's known as the Bone Church. And it has a very interesting feel. Lots of relics all over the place. Lots of bones. The relics of the saints all over the church. And there's a great display in the church with a quote that has often spoke to me in a very deep way this past January. And here's what it says. And it's the saints speaking to us. It's their wisdom to where we are in our lives. So this is what the saints are saying to us in the quote. Where you are now, we once were. And where we are now, you soon shall be. And just kind of let your mind wrap around that a little bit. Let me say it again. This is the saints, the folks in heaven, and they're speaking to us, and this is what they say. Where you are now, we once were. And where we are now, you soon will be. And it really spoke to me. I was there. I knew exactly where I was going. I knew exactly where I was going in the church. I knew exactly what I was looking for in the church. And as I beheld the wisdom of the quote, it really got my attention. Here I am. I'm in Rome, and I'm with my mom and my dad, who my mom and my dad are in their 70s. And, my mom and my dad are not going to be alive forever. And I think I came face to face with that reality as I was looking at that quote, and it really got my attention that where the saints are now, we soon will be, and that means my mom and dad one day will be in heaven. And it really spoke to me about the reality of life and the reality of death. And it was just a real sobering moment for me as I was sitting in the church, and I happened to be in the church with a priest friend of mine, and we were kind of unpacking that together in some spiritual direction. And he said something to me about death. He said something to me about the reality of death that really took my prayer and reflection to the next level. He said, death is easier to embrace if we embrace the little deaths along the way of life. Now, let me say that again. Here we go. You ready? Our ultimate death is easier to embrace if we embrace the little deaths along the way of life. Ultimately, we know that there is our inevitable death where we surrender life, where we give up life. But what my priest friend was trying to impress upon me was that there are seasons in life where we are going to let go, where we're going to, quote unquote, die to ourselves. We go through seasons where we let go, and there's a grieving and a letting go in those moments in life that comes to its ultimate climax in death, of course, but we go through little deaths along the way. So here I am, I'm sitting in this church, I'm thinking about my mom and my dad, and he says this to me about the little deaths of life, and like so much was revealed to me in that moment that I think I've been unpacking that for the last 10 months now. This past year, I have come to face little bitty deaths all along the way, and realize that I've gone through many deaths, many letting goes in my life. Let me give you an example. I've been a priest for 13 years now. And when I was ordained in 2001, I was the young priest. And I'd go to the meetings, and guys would refer to me as the young priest. And I'd speak across the diocese, and I was labeled as the young priest. And I would pop in for here and there with the vocations office, and I was the young priest. And you know, it's so easy for that label to be a lens through which I see myself and I see my priesthood. And I realize that there are guys who are much younger than me who are now priests. I'm no longer the young priest. And these young guys, man, they're doing great stuff for the Lord. And just proud of them and just really hopeful for the future of the church. And just in a very beautiful way, I've prayed through that this year, that I'm not the young priest. I don't have to label myself as that anymore. Now, it required a little death. It required a letting go, but there's so much freedom in my heart now just to be where I am. I'm 42 years old, and boy, my body doesn't move the way it used to. And had just a phenomenal vacation with my family this past summer, and I love to Zydeco dance, and I had my two sisters who I love dearly, and we were at this outdoor concert with a Zydeco band and danced all night long and had a blast with both of my sisters, and woke up the next morning and I was like, wow, muscles are hurting that used to not hurt when I would dance all night long. And I'm not 42. I'm not a young man anymore. I'm 42, and the body's changing. And you know, I was on a full paid scholarship for track and cross country when I was in college, and just an athlete my whole life, and just my body's getting different and older, and I've had to let go of this image that I for so long had of myself as being like a young athlete. And just letting that go this year, praying through that, and again, it required a death inside, but like the freedom that brought in my heart of just kind of letting that go. You see, we all let go of things in life. Dying is a part of life. And if we die to little things along the way, if we embrace the seasons of letting go, then our life is going to be filled with a lot more hope and freedom. You see, every one of us in church today, what we share in common is that we have all had to, quote unquote, die at different points in our life. Every one of us has had to let go of something or someone. And although our ultimate death is long before us in the future, we go through seasons. We have all gone through seasons where we have had to let go. Let me just give you some examples and see if any of these start to really kind of fire your imagination today. We all perhaps have seen that your body, your health, your age affects you. Perhaps for some of us, you can't do what you used to do. Perhaps for some of us, we can't do what we used to do as fast as we used to do. Perhaps you've put on weight. Perhaps you've lost weight. Perhaps you can't lose the weight fast enough the way that you used to be able to do that. Perhaps you can't move or run or exercise and do the same things you used to do in your youth, and you've had to let go of that capacity or that image. Or maybe you can't do what you used to do, like physically or at work. You know, maybe like technology has kind of like sped up so fast that maybe it's hard for us to keep up with all those things, and like a younger workforce is coming into our our professional ranks, and maybe for some of us who find ourselves in an older season in life, like you just can't do the things you used to do professionally. Or maybe you've just had to let go of what your expectations and dreams in life were going to look like. You know, when we're dreaming about life, when we're a teenager, none of us dream about like credit card debt or your hair falling out or you don't look as beautiful as you used to when you were 20 in a bikini, like whatever it is. Like, you know, if we can just laugh at those things, like the little bitty expectations in life that we just try to internalize, life rarely looks at 30, 40, 50 the way you thought it was going to look when you were a teenager dreaming about those things. And perhaps you've had to let go of or die to some unmet expectations in your life. Maybe it's retirement. You know, for some of us who are retired, you've moved into a whole new season, and you had to let go of your identity as a person who worked. You had to let go of that type of stability or unrest in your calendar, and there's a whole new world waiting for you in retirement that requires that you let go and die to an image of yourself and something that you were familiar with. You know, I often laugh with couples that, you know, the day after the honeymoon, you realize that the honeymoon's over. And for some of us in marriage, the honeymoon, you know, quote unquote, lasted longer than just the honeymoon. But at some point, the honeymoon's over in marriage, and you have to let go of this image of what you think a perfect marriage is going to look like. Or maybe you've been through seasons of struggle and difficulty in your marriage, and you've had to let go of the innocence that your marriage once had, or an innocence of trust, or whatever it is. Like sometimes we go through, in our marriages, we go through little deaths along the way as our marriages mature and deepen. But, you know, sometimes there are seasons that are gone in our marriages, and we have to, like, let them go. And of course, you know, just to be honest, to share with you our hearts today, of course, some of us have been divorced or are divorced. And there was a legal death to the marriage, a relational death to the marriage, and you've had to let go of that and expectations, but also there's the practical parameters of that. So you start to see here that a lot of us have been through like little deaths and letting goes, huh? How about your kids? There's a letting go. Like, you know, whenever kids enter the equation, there's a whole new season in your marriage. You will never, again, just be a husband and wife, and the freedom to travel where you want and go where you want and just kind of play at the house and do whatever you want. Like when kids enter the equation, there's a whole new season, and yet there's a letting go in your marriage. Or you have to let your kids go. At some point, they have to be who they are. They can't be your little bitty baby all forever. Like, you have to let them grow up. And when parents let their kids grow up, there's a death that's there. They have to make their own mistakes, and you can't prevent them from making mistakes or protect them in the mistakes. Like, you have to let them go. And of course, there's empty nest for some parents. That's a letting go. That's a death that's there. And of course, there's death itself. And I say this with great reverence. I know we're on holy ground here, but some of us today have faced death. We've been touched by the death of a parent, a sibling, gosh, maybe even a child, a best friend, a neighbor. Or we've had to give someone permission to go. And that's a real letting go inside of us when we have to verbally tell another loved one, hey, it's okay to die. So you see, we all have to let things go. Some of it's midlife, some of it's identity. Like when I was sharing with you the two things that I had to let go of this year, that's just identity things. Some of it's just more graphic, but we all let things go in life. And we go through seasons of dying and letting go. And the most common response to the whole letting go or dying, there's lots of different responses. Here's what I've seen as a person who's prayed through things and with my ears as a priest. The first is denial. A lot of times when we're called to let go, we can just be in denial. And then what happens from there, a lot of times when we have to admit that we're we're being forced. Usually we're forced. Life, the circumstances are forcing us to let go. Usually what happens is there's some anger and resentment that's there. And when there's anger and the resentment, there are often questions. Like, why? Or we can look at him and we can say, why are you letting this happen? Or why are you making this happen? Or where are you in what's happening? And we have questions for him. And underneath the question, what I find a lot of times is just the fear of being out of control. You know, when you're letting go, when you're facing a death or something like that, you're out of control. And the instinct is that we want something that we can control, like an answer. So we ask the question why, or we ask him why. And in reality, we don't like being out of control. Sometimes there's sadness there, and we feel stuck in the letting go season, the death season. And there can easily be depression. So you see, all of those things are in our hearts. And like, look at me right now. Like, what if we could have hope in that season? What if it didn't have to be like that? Hey, y'all, death is a part of life. And what if in the little deaths along the way, in the letting go along the way, what if you and I, we didn't have to struggle if we could have hope? Like, would you want that? Because that's what's offered to us today in Romans chapter 5, verse 5. Second reading from St. Paul. If you're about to go with me to page 56, it's really important that we see the words today. Page 56 in the Missalettes. St. Paul speaking to the church in Rome, chapter 5, verse 5. The second reading there, right there at the top, first line, page 56. So what he says, I'll read it for you. Just kind of like pray through it today. Brothers and sisters, hope does not disappoint. Let me say that again. Hope does not disappoint. Now, I want you to stay with me right now. I want you to think about the last time you had to let something go. The last season that you were in when you were being called to let things go. Maybe that was a recent season. Maybe you're in it now. Like if you can let your heart be there, okay? Now I want to read this again. Hope does not disappoint. Paul says, brothers and sisters, hope does not disappoint because the love of God has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit that has been given to us. And then, of course, the rest of the reading speaks of Jesus Christ, speaks of the power of the cross and his saving us on the cross and justification that comes from him. But like I really want to zero in and let our hearts rest in the beauty of this line from the scriptures that hope does not disappoint. We don't have to be afraid of letting go. I don't have to be afraid of letting go. Just say that in your head right now. I don't have to be afraid of letting go. I don't have to be afraid of death. Say that in your head. Just quietly today in your heart. I don't have to be afraid of death. You know, we're in this series on seasons. We've talked about the natural world, the natural seasons of life. We go through, fall, winter, spring, summer. We've been in winter today, huh? Woke up this morning. If you woke up on time with daylight savings times, right? Woke up this morning and it's cold outside. Like winter has come early to South Louisiana. Now it's a cold front, but what we know is that nature, you can feel it this morning. It's different. It's cold outside. Everybody's got their coats on today. It's gray outside. The sugarcane was cut now, and things just look like they're dying, huh? It's a cold, gray day. The sugarcane fields are all wide open now. Now, if I had never been through winter, if I'd never seen this before, if I had never been through a winter season before, and I did not know that spring always follows winter, I would look at the world this morning and I would be shocked and surprised, and I might be a little afraid. And you can go through winter if you've never been through winter, and you can think that it's always going to be like that. However, we know, wisdom tells us that we know spring follows. And wisdom tells us that there's something to accomplish in winter. There's a purpose to the dying in winter. And so the hope that is given to us in the seasons of letting go is knowing that spring always follows winter, and you don't have to be afraid of letting go, because God is doing something in your life in the letting go that inevitably will bring us to a quote-unquote new springtime, a new spring, a new time of life. And I just want to remind you today that every season, like winter, has a beginning and an end. It has a particular personality, and it has something to accomplish. And so what we know is that the seasons of letting go in our life are the same thing. They have a beginning and an end. It's not going to be like this forever. You're not going to be letting go or quote-unquote dying in the little ways forever. But it has something to accomplish. So what's the one thing that we can do this week? Just one thing that you and I could do this week. Well, just ask yourself, as I have asked you in the past, what season in life are you in? Because you can be in a season of letting go, maybe professionally or personally or physically, while at the same time you might be in a season of blessing financially or relationally. Like, you can have two different seasons going at the same time. And if you are in a season where you're called to let something go, I just want to offer some encouragement to you today. Number one, don't fight it. You can't stop it. You can't force it. You can't speed it up. I can look at the weather all day long and I can say, get warm, get warm, get warm. But the weather, the season of winter, it's going to unfold despite me. And sometimes when you're in a season of letting go, you can't stop it. Number two, just relax. Just give everything in your heart to God. Now, I know that for some of us, you might be angry at God, and that's okay insofar as you just open up your heart and you share all that with God. And then listen to me today. Listen to me. Wisdom says, don't shut down after that. Let God respond. Don't just let God have it. That's never healthy. You can let God have it, but then you got to stay there and you got to let him respond. He only wants what's best for you. He only wants your freedom. Like, hold on to that and let that guide you with hope in the letting go. And finally, don't isolate. That's a tendency a lot of times when we go through death or when we go through seasons of letting go. We just kind of want to be on our own or be by ourselves or process things on our own. And you don't have to do that. That's a dangerous place to be. Like, find somebody who's got wisdom. Connect with people who love you. Be in relationship with the people that you need to be in relationship with. Or here's just a real invitation. We started Good Fridays 2 weeks ago. I hear confessions every Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's 12 hours every Friday that I personally am in the confessional just for you. Like, if you want to stop by, hey, grab a cup of coffee and come on in. If you want to confess, great. If you just need some time to pray and process, that's fine too. Just stop on by. Like, whoever it is, just don't isolate. You're not alone. And there's hope in the letting go. Death's a part of life. You don't have to be afraid of it. And there are seasons when we're called to let go that are only there to bring us to freedom. How about we pray a little bit right now? Just invite you to close your eyes just for a second. And just right now, I want you to just get in touch with what are you called to let go of, or where have you called to let go? Heavenly Father, we thank you for who you are, especially in the seasons where we're called to let go. We ask that you would bless us today as only you can.